Hello, this is Eastern Europe Review, the joint production of BELSAT TV and TVP World, with reports and analysis from Belarus, Russia and Ukraine. I am Sergei Pelesa, and these are the stories. Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group are supposed to come to Belarus. What is their purpose?
I
would be more worried about the Syrianization of Belarus.
Putin is waging war while many Russians continue to live in the 21st century without access to basic amenities like running water.
None of the officials need to worry about it at all.
The echoes of the Kakhovka power plant explosion have subsided. However, the tragedy continues for the village, which remains flooded.
There's nothing left. Here was my son's barn. Oh my God. Good gracious.
Brutal killers from the Russian PMC Wagner may potentially arrive in Belarus, which is an outcome of the march to Moscow led by the head of the mercenaries, Yevgeny Prigozhin. No one has suffered more from the rebellion against Putin's authorities than the Belarusians, although Prigozhin may offer potential advantages to the Lukashenka regime. Even members of the dictator's circle do not appear pleased about it.
The worst consequences of an open confrontation of the mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin against Russian authorities are surprisingly going to be borne by Belarusians. During the Prigozhin rebellion, the dictator Lukashenka reportedly assumed the role of a negotiator and agreed that the head of Russia's private Wagner military group would stop his march to Moscow and go to Belarus.
If the Kremlin and Putin's power were to collapse, if a great turmoil began there, then Lukashenka's regime would collapse too. So it was a pragmatic decision. Lukashenka isn't such a fool as to not understand all the costs and consequences of dragging Prigozhin and his soldiers to Belarus.
Maintaining Prigozhin's fighters during the past year of the full-scale war has cost Kremlin about $1 billion from the state budget. The reputational losses resulting from the brutal actions of the Wagner troops in Ukraine and Putin's perceived flight from Moscow during the rebellion are incalculable. Meanwhile, Lukashenka is trying to convince his generals that he has invited valuable professionals to the country.
Let their commanders meet our commanders on the training grounds to show and share tactics, weapons, how to attack and how to defend. It's priceless. We need to get it from the Wagner troops.
However, not everyone from Lukashenka's entourage is pleased with the idea of welcoming the Wagner fighters into Belarus.
Even the generals who support Lukashenka are against the fact that an organization which includes rapists, murderers and criminals who are prosecuted in many countries will end up on the territory of Belarus. This is a question of the security of Belarusian society.
It remains unknown how many Wagner forces will come to Belarus, whether they will be armed, and what their activities will be within the country.
It would be strange for Russia to give Lukashenka one of the most combat-capable units, especially with the equipment which was actively exported from the territory of Belarus precisely in order to strengthen the Russian front in Ukraine. That's why I don't think we should expect large groups of Wagner fighters here.
In any case, Ukraine, Poland and Lithuania are already taking or preparing measures to ensure their security in the event that Wagner mercenaries enter Belarus. The presence of Prigozhin and his soldiers in Belarus could potentially lead to the imposition of new sanctions by Western countries.
I would be more worried about the Syrianization of Belarus. As soon as the first shots are fired in Belarus, it will be Syria 2011. When there will be a lot of people who want to liberate Belarus, to seize Belarus, to make Belarus their base and continue to bomb until Belarusians say, "Don't bomb, we agree on everything. Let Lukashenka rule, let Putin or Prigozhin rule."
There is also a possibility that Lukashenka would like to use the Wagner forces against the Belarusian volunteer formations located in Ukraine. However, it's unlikely that Lukashenka can trust Prigozhin, remembering his march to Moscow. Similarly, Prigozhin may not trust the promises of either Lukashenka or Putin.
More than 12 million people in Russia lack access to the central water supply, and residents in 83 regions are not provided with quality drinking water. In the Siberian city of Kemerovo, residents are threatening to go on strike in Moscow if they do not receive the water pipeline, which was promised to them over 15 years ago.
The city of Kemerovo is a significant industrial, transport, and economic hub in western Siberia. It is located in a region with vast coal reserves, making it home to numerous coal mining companies. Prior to Russia's conflict with Ukraine, 57% of the minerals extracted in this region were exported. Despite ongoing challenges, such as the impact of high coal prices, regional budget revenues have continued to increase. However, a portion of these funds is diverted to Moscow, while ordinary people in the region face various difficulties in their daily lives.
Here's the water we have, which we use for watering the vegetable garden or for washing. Take a look. Can you see it? And there's no water. Tasty.
This is a spontaneous rally taking place in a district of Kemerovo. For decades, hundreds of people in this area have been living without a centralized water supply. Instead of placards, they are holding bottles filled with muddy liquid to symbolize their protest. The water situation in the city has reached a critical point in recent years, with wells drying up and residents resorting to drilling their own holes, from which flows brown and unsuitable slurry, rendering it unfit for drinking.
As a Russian, I understand that the situation in the country right now isn't favorable for the people, but I believe that this issue should have been resolved long ago, a very long time ago.
Pensioner Tatiana Zasurhina used to take water from the well in her garden. However, the source has now dried up. As a result, tanker trucks bring drinking water to her neighborhood twice a week, and people do their best to collect as much water as possible. Tatiana, being an elderly woman, can only bring home a small amount in buckets just for cooking. Technical water is used for the city and household needs. Unfortunately, the washing machine that Tatiana has recently bought broke down due to poor water quality.
It worked for 4 months, and that was it. We bought a new one.
In an attempt to capture the attention of officials regarding their issues, people are hanging banners and distributing flyers on the streets. However, the communal services are removing these displays. Frustrated by the lack of response from the authorities, residents from this district of Kemerovo made a promise to organize a protest in Moscow, which is located 3,000 kilometers away from their hometown. In the Saratov region, residents have raised concerns about worms in their water supply. In a small neighborhood, residents have reported the continuous flow of industrial liquid through their pipes for several years. The unsettling fact is that the pipes in this particular area pass through the local cemetery.
None of the officials need to worry about it at all. They're sitting there drinking clean spring water, and here people are drinking cadaver water. This polluted water, when it goes from the corpses, it all goes into the springs, and from the springs it flows down into the ravine. A small water intake is made, and the water is pumped from there.
While experts are investigating the water's composition, residents continue to drink it. They claim that community workers have not been seen in the area even after the scandal. Right next to the area where the water is being drawn, there is garbage that has never been cleared. According to a study conducted by Rosstat on living conditions in Russia, over 22% of Russians lack access to centralized sewage. Approximately 17% of the country's residents rely on a system of pipes leading to cesspools, and nearly 6% of Russians have no sewage system at all.
Since the destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant, the frontline village of Ingulets in Kherson Oblast has remained flooded. The water level in the area reached a maximum of 7 meters. Currently, local residents are making efforts to save any property that has survived the flood.
This is our house. Here. Look where the water has reached. It got there. Go and see what's inside. Come in. See what's in the house for yourself. How can you live? What can you do? I'm 73 years old, so how can I rebuild all this?
In Ingulets village, located in the Kherson region, the floodwaters have receded in some areas. However, approximately 100 houses, including Nadia's, remain flooded. Nadia's home was severely affected by the massive flood. She didn't have the opportunity to save any of her belongings, not even her clothes. According to Nadia, the water rose rapidly, leaving her with little time to react.
The soldiers took us out of here because we were already in the water like this. But we couldn't bring anything else with us. We only grabbed our documents and whatever little money we had.
All Nadia was left with were her pets. Fortunately, she was able to move them to the roof during the flood.
Come here. Come here, my kitty. These are our animals. They're all we have left. Our cats. We put those chickens up there in the attic, up there on the roof, where they were perched. I had the grain. The grain, look, it was all washed away.
The woman's vegetable garden, along with those of most locals, remained submerged underwater.
It was a vegetable garden. There was hay and potatoes. I was so happy. It was such a beautiful vegetable garden. It's over. There's nothing left. Here was my son's barn. Oh my God. Good gracious.
Yuri and Oksana are displaced persons from the village of Alexandrivka, which was destroyed by the Russian troops.
They destroyed our village. They're rebuilding it bit by bit, but thank God volunteers helped us. They've rebuilt the roof.
The family has 3 adopted children, so they moved to Ingulets. Unfortunately, they were also affected by a devastating flood in their new location.
We tried lifting the stones, but as you can see, everything is collapsing, and the wall has been damaged a bit. The water started rising and washing over the walls, and everything began to collapse. The upper slabs, even they cracked. I don't know why, as they shouldn't have broken.
Once the mine and infection checks are completed, Yuri plans to start the process of rebuilding his home.
A bomb squad has to go door to door to check the flooded houses where reeds, mud and everything else has accumulated. They have to check that there are no mines, because there were reports that mines were floating in our river.
It is not only humans who are suffering, but animals have also been affected by the floods. Stepan, a resident of the village of Ingulets, breeds rare blue goats. When his house was flooded, the first thing he did was to rescue his beloved goats. Currently, the goats are temporarily housed in a small shed.
Here we have mud houses. What can you do? They were inherited, and water is water. Well, the water got higher than the ceiling, the roof became buoyant, and the house got soaked and sank.
Despite being located 12 kilometers from the front, nearly 2,000 people have remained in the village. However, those whose homes have been flooded have evacuated to neighboring settlements.
A lot of people have left. For example, people from the street and neighboring streets, because their homes had been flooded with water reaching up to their roofs. People who had no family members or children nearby had nowhere to go. That is why they got evacuated. Mostly they moved to Odessa so that they could come back in 5 or 7 days.
Today, the locals hold on to the hope that they will soon be able to rebuild their lives and start afresh once the water recedes completely from the village of Ingulets.
These are all our stories for you today. Thank you for watching Eastern Europe Review. I am Sergei Pelesa. Please continue to stay with TVP World and stand with Ukraine.